Celebrate family, would you welcome our mayor, Paul Tenhaken, and actress Jessica Obolum. There's a party going on right here.
They didn't do a standing O at the 5 o'clock service yesterday, just so you know. This is a great service. This is a great group of people.
You have to graduate into this service. It's all part of it, man. Oh my goodness, I'm so glad that you two are here. It is so cool. And man, just thank you for taking the time, because I know there's demands in your life, and there's so many things that pull you in different directions. And so here we are. So Jessica, I just want to begin with you, and I want them to get a little acquainted with you. So because it really ties in even in the scene we just saw, and ties into this whole unbelievable journey you've been on in this movie. Tell us a little about yourself and where you're from and your family and some of your background.
Hello, good morning. I am from Austin, Texas, but both my parents were born and raised in Nigeria, and then they moved to Texas and had us. I'm one of 6, so I was in Austin until I was about 11, and then my parents, they sent me to Nigeria by myself, where I lived with my uncle and my aunt and my cousins. So I was there for about 3 years. I went to middle school there. And it was a complete culture shock to go from America to Nigeria. And so then I was there for 3 years, and then I came back to Texas. And that was when I started getting into acting. Before I went to Nigeria, that was when I decided that I wanted to become an actor at 11. And that same year, it was the year I went to Nigeria. And so I had to kind of put my dream on pause, because the school that I was at in Nigeria, they didn't have a acting class or really any art class at all. The Nigerian school system doesn't emphasize that. They are more so wanting us to become doctors and lawyers and engineers and, the important jobs. And so I didn't get into acting until I came back. And so then I went to the University of Texas at Austin, and I got someone in the house supports, yes. And
I always love that. There's always one lost person that somehow ventured in. You know what I mean?
And if you're lost, you will be found. Okay? Oh. And so then
oh my goodness.
So I got a theater degree from the University of Texas, and then I moved to LA, Los Angeles. And I've been there for it'll be 5 years next month. And we shot this movie a couple of years ago.
Okay, real quickly, I don't want to jump over something you said and that they would miss it, because it's a significant thing. You were sent at the age of 11 back to Nigeria. Okay, yeah. Help us with that just a little bit.
Okay. So I'd only been to Nigeria once before that, and that was when I was 4. And that was just a family trip during Christmas. And so at 11, my parents were, so apparently I was a stubborn child. And they told me that if I don't get my act together, I'm going to send you to Nigeria. If you don't get your act together, you're going to Nigeria. And I was like, okay, all right, sure. But they did. They sent me. They held true to their claim. So I went by myself, and I just remember being in the airport and about to walk through the tunnel to get on the plane, and my dad is on the other side, and he's like, bye. And I'm like, no, why are you doing this to me? Like, what is wrong with you? But, so yeah, it was that first year, I just had it in my mind that I'm just being punished. They sent me to another country, and this is just all bad. And so it was kind of hard for me to adjust that first year. But so I would come home to Texas every summer to visit and then go back. But my second and third year in Nigeria, I loved it because I'd gotten over the shock, and I was like, hey, I am free from my parents. Like, I can do whatever I want. Because my uncle, my aunt, they didn't care what I did. They just kind of let me do my thing at 12. And so I was just loving it, and I made some awesome friends. And honestly, I'm so grateful to my parents for doing that, because it has made me who I am. My whole life is like almost centered around being Nigerian. I'm so proud of it, and I have 2 nonprofits that are Nigerian based, and I just do whatever I can to help keep my culture alive in America and in the diaspora. And it helps me do roles like this, and I would not be here today if not for that experience.
I love that. I know that there's parents wondering if your relatives would be willing to take their child. If you're willing to talk about that later, I was like, wow, we never thought of Nigeria.
Right? Just be prepared.
You got into acting when you saw it in television. You don't have to take much time, but there's a reason when you saw it in television. Why did you do it? I mean, you looked at this thing, you're watching it, and...
Oh, yes. So I was 11. This was before I went to Nigeria. And I was just sitting watching TV as a kid does. And I just remember just staring at, the actors and just being like, that looks fun and easy. I'm going to do it. So that's how the dream.
Well, that brings me to our
about.
mayor, because that's exactly why he ran. Because...
Not really.
All right, well, that being said, why mayor? And how did your faith play in all this, Paul?
Well, thanks for having me, for the warm welcome this morning, and it's an honor to be here. The role to the mayor's office, or the path to the mayor's office, was an interesting one for me, where I was in the private sector, obviously, my whole life, and for those who know me well, they know that I often refer to my business. We had 35 employees. I often talked about it as my mission field. Those are my 35 employees. This is my mission field. And poured into those people, and the business grew, and things were rocking, and I was in an extremely comfortable state in life. I was comfortable financially. I was comfortable with my work. I was comfortable with my schedule. And it just was very unfulfilling, to be frank. And I knew God just had something else for me. I said, there's got to be more to this. And for about 3 years, I had just different circumstances come across my path about potentially running for office, and specifically running for mayor. And every time someone would approach me about it, or I'd have a conversation with someone and they'd bring it up, I would run from it. I'd say, you got the wrong guy. Politics is a mess. Don't want anything to do with it. It's not me. And I often told people I felt like Jonah. Jonah was called, and Jonah's like, you got the wrong guy, Lord. I'm going to keep running from this. And eventually couldn't kind of run from it any longer. And I said, okay, God, the signals are all there. I'm going to do this. You're calling me to run for mayor. Maybe not calling me to win, but you're calling me to run. And I'm going to be faithful to this calling to run. And so unwound myself from my business and decided to run. And it was extremely uncomfortable time in life to leave a world you know to get into kind of an unknown and sometimes messy place. And I ran. And apparently he wanted me to serve, because here I am, 106 days later, doing it. So.
This really ties in to the role that Jessica played and what this movie is so much about. And I'm gonna flip this. I'm gonna come back to you real quick, Paul. when you and I met, there was already some things that were unfolding in connection to this church I didn't even know about. And it floors me. And I'd like you to bring that out just a little bit, because I'm still in awe of it.
Yeah, while I was running for office, and it really came out a lot that I really care about people. I love people. I mean, I love wastewater and street utilities and stuff like that, but I really love people. That's why I'm doing this. And someone who doesn't even go to this church sent me a link to a Celebrate service. And he said, do you know what they're thinking about doing at Celebrate with the School for the Deaf campus? And he said, you got to check this out, because this dovetails with what you often talk about with people. And he said, fast forward to past the boring pastor stuff, and about at minute 40, about at minute 40.
Why are you applauding? I don't.
Yeah. But they said at minute 40, Doug Morrison is going to get up and talk about their plan. And I sat and I listened to that, and I was just blown away. And I said, this is the church. This is what the church is supposed to do. This is the calling of the church. And I was so worked up about that, I put that into a 100-day plan that I put into office. I said, I need to figure out what's going on with the CSD campus, because I want to be supportive of this calling that's been placed on this church to do this, because it's exactly what the city needs.
That is so. As I sit here, I'm still wrapping my heart around that. How God begins to orchestrate that, because that's really what this movie's about. How God begins to cast the seed and starts putting things in different people. We hadn't even talked yet. I had no idea of that. And how transparent you were about that over breakfast was just so moving to me. And we'll pull that out here in just a second. But Jessica, as you're working on this role, some things are starting to happen in you as you start taking on this role of a May. Who she was, what she went through, and how God begins to orchestrate. Can you be a little vulnerable with us? Walk through us a little bit what you as an actress is going through as you're beginning to fall in love with this character?
Yes. So when I got the part, obviously I was very excited. But then I was like, okay, so this is not just any part. You have just been given a huge task to portray someone who went through a genocide. Real life. This is not just a fictional story. This is a true story. This person is alive, and I have to not only tell her story, but also tell it the right way and give it justice. Because it's different to just play a part that someone wrote, but if this person is alive, that responsibility is huge. So I was just like, what can I do to make sure I do this right and tell these people's story the way it should be told? And so I haven't met Ame, the person that I played. I have not met her to this day. So I was able to watch a documentary that she played a part in. It's actually the documentary of her story and the other two families that are featured in the movie. It's like their story, but in a documentary form. So I watched that, and I was able to talk to her on the phone one time, and that was pretty much all I had to go off of. So then I just started doing research. What can I find out about the genocide? It happened in '94. I was 4 years old, so I really didn't know anything. And I never really thought or cared to look into it until I got the role. And so then I'm starting to think, so we shot the movie in South Africa, not Rwanda. And I remember once we got to South Africa, it was, exciting, first time in South Africa, woo, it's gonna be fun, awesome. And then I finally got into my hotel room and just finally had a moment to myself. And I went out on the balcony, and literally the hotel was on the beach, so it was just the ocean. And I was just sitting there, and then I was just thinking, like, God, you've put me in this place. You have given me such a huge responsibility to tell this story. And it made me think about a movie I had just shot the year prior. And this movie is called Trafficked, and it's about human trafficking. And I played a person in bondage, a sex slave. And I was like, you are giving me all these intense roles. Like, what is going on? And when I did that, when I had that experience doing Trafficked, I realized that I am giving a voice to people who are voiceless, people who are literally in bondage. That human trafficking industry is $1 billion industry, and it's happening now, today, every second. People are getting trafficked, and it just humbled me to be able to take on that role and give a voice to people who have no voice. And then now, fast forwarding to Beautifully Broken, I am telling such an amazing story of people who went through a genocide and survived it, and being able to put their story out. So in that moment, on the balcony, looking at the ocean, and just like realizing at that moment that God was making me a vessel to tell people's stories, to not just act and have an acting career and, bright lights and, He was making me a vessel. And I realized that was my purpose as an actor, to tell stories that matter. And that's all I want to do.
I love that. I love that. I love it. Our people need to hear that. How God is weaving things. We don't see it. We don't understand it. 15 years ago, I'm driving on to the CSD campus, literally driving on in that parking lot, and I'd begin to pray. And I remember many times Pastor Brent and I would go there, and I would tell Brent, wouldn't this be a great place for a church? 15 years ago. And all of that time having no idea and how God orchestrated that, and someone calls out and puts a seed in you that is so dear to your heart. And I want to pull that apart a little bit because you're a vessel too as our mayor. And this isn't just a title or a position for you. You said a moment ago, I'm in the people business. You love people. So I'm really asking if you're okay to be a little more vulnerable with us as you and I were when we were together. The church plays a huge role as you look to the vision of this city. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah, so Sioux Falls is such a fantastic city, such a wonderful place. The hearts of the people in this city are amazing. But we have increased challenges in our city. We have increased challenges with kids, with poverty, with narcotics challenges. The gentleman I talked to after the first service, who's 4 months clean off heroin.
Love that.
But a lot of times what happens is people see these challenges in the community and they say, city, what are you going to do about this? City, what are you going to do? Mayor, what are you going to do about this? And while we play a role, we play one role, but I want to toss it back and say, what are you going to do about it? What is this church going to do about it? What is your business going to do about it? And the church, if you look at what the foundational purpose of church is, and the church, and I love a sign I saw when I left yesterday. It said, now church starts. It said at the exit. The church is to go out and care for people in the community and love your brothers and sisters and go out and make disciples. And the church is called to help people in need. That is the fundamental foundation of the church. Before there were all these nonprofits, that was the church's role. And we need to get back to the church playing that role. And I think with what the vision that you're looking to do with the campus here gets back to what is the purpose of the church? Why do you exist? And we can't do it alone as a city. I need Celebrate, man. I need Celebrate to help.
One of the moments when we were having breakfast, and I shared with you, I told our church I was going to tell them that every year we're going to give you 25,000 plus hours of whatever you need free. And when I shared that with our mayor, tears started running down your cheeks. And that was so moving to me because you understand the role. You understand what we need to do in partnership. We're in this together. And I think God has been putting that deep in my heart. He's been putting in your heart and how he weaves it together, in this movie. We want to give up on things too quickly. And you said it earlier. I think we like to chase comfort. And I want you to listen to this very carefully. I really believe if the American mindset of what God is supposed to do when you come to know Christ actually happened, the church in America would no longer exist. Let me put it another way. So many people come to Christ because Christ is going to fix all their problems. And then when he doesn't do it the way you want, I hear this overwhelmingly from so many people. I tried Jesus, it didn't work. And if God was that God, you and I wouldn't be following him. The key to faith is understanding. This side of heaven, we go through valleys. But I will fear nothing because the Lord God is with me. I'm not chained to a valley. I'm not chained to my circumstances. The power of our praise is when we're in the most difficult of times. It gets messy. God never wanted the church to be clean. If that was true, no one would be in the church. I love what my grandfather always said. Had a gal come up and said, I'm just looking for the perfect church. And he says, well, guess what? The moment you join it, it'll no longer be perfect. Hope you don't find it. Anyway, because it's just a reality of life. I'm still in the bathtub getting cleaned up by Jesus. And he invites me to that table. And too often we sell a gospel where we tell people you need to clean up your hands before you come sit at the table. Church, it's going to be messy. God's doing something. It's unbelievable. And the church needs to lead that way in the power of their praise. No matter what they're going through, we are going to be the hands and feet of Jesus. Does it get messy? It gets messy. But how cool was what God has been doing in setting this up for such a time. When I sat with my mayor, do you want me to call you mayor or Paul?
Mr. Mayor is fine.
Okay.
I'm kidding. Paul is fine.
Okay. Dr. Keith would be nice too. But to sit with you and hear your heart and knowing it's going to be messy. Because we're in the people business and people have opinions, and sometimes even in the church, our opinions become more important than his word, whether we like it or not. But my goodness, in the midst of the mess, we've got a God who does things that we can't even begin to fathom. And if we're willing to brave the cross, we always have the promise of the resurrection. And so I want you to get a little bold here, and then Jessica, I want to come back to you because I want to tie this movie together, because I really think that you could take literally what we believe God's perceiving us to do. You could take it out. You saw the movie with me. You could literally take it out. I love what you shared, Paul. It's like they wrote that script for you. Mm-hmm. It's so amazing. What would you tell this church? As the mayor of the city, this specific church, what would you want them to hear as our mayor?
Well, I think you are sitting here with a very unique opportunity in front of you to be the hands and feet of Christ in a way that our community probably is not used to seeing the church be. And I go back time and time again to the Matthew West song where he shakes his fist at heaven and said, God, how could you let all this happen? How can you let this poverty happen and these narcotics challenges happen? How could you let Rwandan genocide happen? And why don't you do something about this? And he says, I did. I created you. And he created this church. And so I guess my challenge to this church would be, you're here for a time such as this. You know, God has been working in the hearts, I think, of this church for many years to get you to this point and to do something very, very bold in our city. And I can tell you from the guy sitting in City Hall, we need Celebrate. We need this vision, and we need to work together to help make it a reality.
Jessica, what would you want? I want everybody in our church to see this movie. And I'll say it again, I want everybody to take someone who's unchurched or someone who is spiritually unresolved. I want them to take someone and let them see this movie because I think you'd agree, it's not just a movie. There's something special about it that God's doing. What do you want people to take away as one of the actresses and pouring your heart into it? What would you want everybody in this room to take away when they leave the theater?
This movie is basically a masterclass in faith. So it's based off of 3 families, and obviously two of them, went through a genocide, a war, and they got through it. How the family, they were being literally chased by machetes. People were trying to kill them constantly. And if you speak with the real William Zera, he will tell you he doesn't know. They should have died many times. They will tell you that they don't know how they got through it, and the only explanation they have is through God, through faith. You'll see in the movie as well. He was, when they were literally looking at corpses, and he was still calling on God and saying, I just have to trust God and believe that we will get through this. And they did. I mean, they're still alive today. They are still alive and well. They made it out of the genocide. They made it to another country, America, and they are living, and they are happy, and they are able to tell this story. So to me, being able to get through something like that when all of the odds are stacked against you, that's nothing but God to me. And that just teaches me, no matter how terrible your situation is, when you're looking death in the eyes, if you just call on God and believe in God and have your faith and know that you will get through it, He'll get you through it. He will set you free. There is a light at the end of whatever dark path you might be going through. So that's what I want you to take away from this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And time doesn't permit, but you've glimpsed me with some of the things in your own family and some of the pains and the trials and the things. People sometimes look and think, well, you got it all easy. You live out in LA and Hollywood but this is real personal for her, just in her own world, in her own life. And just an amazing story. I'm so proud of you, Jessica. So proud of you. And what a gift for the kingdom of God. I love the word you use. I'm a vessel. And it's not just acting. It's just not a career. Here's my life, God, use it. And so thank you. On just behalf of the church, thank you. And so proud of you for that. Mayor, I want to pray for both of you. I've said this in all services, and I want all our people to hear it. And in church, I want you to hear this. This is a friendship I'm going to really foster. But if you ever come to me and say, the next time you meet with our mayor, can you ask him this or ask him that? And the answer is dead no. I want to be his friend because everybody's going to be asking it and already have. Your world is inundated by it. This isn't a friendship based on any condition. If all I get to do is pray for you, I feel honored. I love you. And I'm so honored that God's put you in this position. And my prayer is, God, I want to know how to serve him. I want him to know that whatever he needs, whatever prayers, it's safe. I'm not sharing with anyone. If I don't get that privilege, there's a warrior here that just wants to tell you, go, keep going. And be praying for your wife and your children. And so thank you. And God's speed and power with you, because his presence is on you. And it'll get messy. You already know that. Already is. But he's a God of messes. He can fix anything. He can do everything. So I let you say one last thing to this church. And then I'm going to pray. What would you want to say to them? This is your pulpit. You're God's anointed right now. What do you want to say?
Well, I think what I would say is something that phrase that got me probably into the office that I'm in today, which 5 years ago, this was never the plan for me to be doing this. But you have a chance to be the change you want to see in our city. So it's one thing to talk about it. It's another thing to do it and to be that change. So I hope this church just continues to think big and think boldly and go out and be the change you want to see in Sioux Falls. And you have a unique opportunity right in front of you right now to do that. And I hope that God's will be done. Not your will, but his will. When you vote today and when you decide what you're going to do, I pray that that's his will, whatever the outcome of that. So be the change you want to see in this city.
Yeah. When I'm done praying, Pastor Austin's going to come up and he'll close up the service. Jessica's going to sneak out into the Welcome Center. If you'd like to just touch base with her, she's got things out there she'd love to sign. She'd love to take a picture, anything like that. She's available, and I so appreciate her willing to do that and being here. Let me pray for you too. Father, I thank you for Jessica. I love those words. I'm a vessel. This is how I get to communicate, by taking on people's roles and to do everything I can to be as authentic and true to that, to send a message to the world, to be the hands and feet. And God, we all would agree the power of film, there's something about it. So many of us can talk about a certain film and a certain line and a certain character that we can relate to. And God, that she surrenders herself to that. God, I pray for unbelievable protection around her as she keeps stepping into new roles. And yet, God, I pray that you would keep sending to her things that she never even dreamed of. God, take her into your world. Let her see the impossibilities because she serves a possible God. God, thank you. Continue to grow her heart. I just feel so honored in the few hours I've gotten to know her. Just what they told me when she comes. Just how beautiful of a person she is on the inside. Continue to just hold that in your hand as she keeps stepping out for you. Keep surrounding her with amazing people. People that got her backside, who love her, who don't want to take advantage of her. And God, I thank you for my mayor. And God, I pray for legions of angels that will lead him, surround him. God, that will do the same for his wife, Jill, and the children. And God, wherever he goes, speak into him your words, that his lips would just move, but the Spirit of God would speak. That God, in his leadership, that lives would come to Jesus. More than everything else. Through his leadership, don't fix our city, fix our people's hearts. Because that's the city. We're in the people business. God, shower him with favor in everything And God, may we be a church that we don't lose ourselves in politics, in opinions, in positions, but we join forces in our hands because we are the people of God, led by your purpose. And God, we say thanks. And everyone says in Jesus' name, amen.